The blackish slave, Paraseca, was forced to bear his master more than 200 children. The flow of fresh Africans into the USA and the Caribbean as slaves came to an end in January 1808 and would not resume for eternity. At the same time, rice, sugarcane, and cotton were being rapidly expanded throughout the Caribbean and the United States. The creation of the cotton gin empowered the beneficial development of short staple cotton, which could be delivered more broadly than different sorts, prompting the monetary superiority of cotton all through the profound South. Slaves were treated as an item by proprietors and brokers the same, viewed as the essential work for the creation of worthwhile money, crops that took care of the three-sided exchange. With the finish of the slave exchange and high death rates among slaves because of overwhelming work, the stockpile of slaves was running low. Slaveholders required an answer, and they required it quick. With the course to Africa totally cut off, they went to something more vile, a thought that must be brought into the world in an outlook seeing people as items, without any freedoms than a cow or a pony. To add to the stock of slaves, slaveholders viewed at the fruitfulness of slave ladies as a component of their efficiency, irregularly driving them to have enormous quantities of youngsters. During this time, terms like reproducers, rearing slaves, youngster-bearing ladies, reproducing period, and excessively old to raise got comfortable. The rearing of slaves would address the lack emergency and damn the people in the future of the subjugated. Notwithstanding, inside this misfortune is the narrative of a go-on man to father however many youngsters as make up a little town, Paraseca. There are numerous stories to his legend. With some idiom he lived multiple times, the lifetimes of any slave, while others say he was gifted to sow seeds, as well as fortunate to never observe the severity of subjugation in its actual structure. Carrying on with a satisfied life regardless of turning into a legend, verifiable data about Paraseca stays scant, confusing many individuals concerning who he truly was. In this video, we will turn around the hands of time and visit perhaps of the most peculiar time ever, returning to the Caribbean, where subjugated men were entrusted with delivering the up-and-coming age of slaves. Before we get deeper into the video, please like the video and hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell to get notified when I release new video, Let Continue, about our enlightening dark story. With the coming of slavery producing, slaveholders needed the best hands in the fields, so they reared men with ladies, participating in a type of normal determination, picking unquestionably the best men to sow their seeds. The choice cycle shifted among various slave proprietors. However, by and large, they would survey specific actual attributes and capacities. Subjugated men who were viewed areas of strength for as fit and solid were frequently liked for reproducing in light of the fact that slave proprietors accepted that these characteristics would be given to people in the future, bringing about posterity who could persevere through difficult work and be productive resources. Actual highlights like level, solid form, and perseverance were exceptionally esteemed. These attributes were remembered to upgrade a singular's capacity to work in the fields, perform weighty assignments, and endure the cruel states of manor life. Oppressed men who showed these qualities were in many cases picked as rearing accomplices. Moreover, some slave proprietors focused on unambiguous actual qualities that they accepted would expand the market worth of subjugated people. For instance, men with more pleasant complexions or explicit facial highlights were now and again liked, as they were viewed as additional helpful by possible purchasers. This inclination mirrored the profoundly settled in bigoted convictions of the time. It was during this time that the legend of Paraseca would unfurl. Paraseca, whose genuine name was Roque José Florencio, was a subjugated African who got through a daily existence set apart by persecution and dehumanization in Brazil. His disastrous presence spun around his job as a reproducer, purchased explicitly to deliver posterity for his proprietor's advantage. His epithet, Paraseca, which means dry paw in English, started from a practice among subjugated people on the ranch where he resided. Slaves were given creature names, and because of Paraseca's tall height, remaining at 218 meters, slender legs, and huge hands and feet, he was given the name Paraseca. Brought into the world in Sorocaba, Sao Paulo, Seca would be subjugated and turned into the property of a rancher from São Carlos, Sao Paulo. Notwithstanding, Seca didn't carry on with the existence of a commonplace slave. He had a decent connection with his proprietor, Francisco da Cunha Bueno, who endowed him with obligations, for example, conveying mail and really focusing on the livestock. This necessitated him to travel day to day riding a horse between the country town and the city of San Carlos. He partook in a one-of-a-kind situation as an oppressed man, as he didn't work in the fields or live in the slave quarters. Remaining at a great level of 7 feet, 2 inches or 2.18 meters tall, he was considered an ideal contender for the job of a razor because of winning notions. During the hour of subjection in Brazil, it was accepted that tall men with thin legs were bound to father male kids, which were truly necessary to work in the fields and keep an eye on domesticated animals. Taking advantage of this legend, Pataseca was assigned as a slave reproducer by his proprietor, liable for impregnating the female slaves on the ranch. His relatives gauged that around 30% of the ongoing populace in the area of St. Nick Eudoxia, San Carlos, can follow their heritage back to Pataseca. Seca's jobs were to create serious areas of strength for a power with good hereditary qualities to support the efficiency of his proprietor, without causing any extra monetary costs. Seca's life was constrained by his proprietor's longings. He was fastidiously checked for illnesses, very much took care of, and, similar to domesticated animals, set to fill in as a reproducer. The specific number of ladies he laid down with, or the recurrence of these experiences, stays obscure. Notwithstanding, it is assessed that Pataseca fathered north of 200 youngsters who acquired their dad's subjugated status. Thus, they too experienced existences of subjugation, with some being sold for benefit and others constrained to work on their proprietors' ranches. The offspring of Pataseca were dealt with inadequately and needed to persevere through unforgiving circumstances and unbelievable remorselessness. They were frequently compelled to work from an extremely youthful age, performing burdensome work on ranches or in families where they were claimed. These kids were not permitted to have an ordinary youth and were deprived of their honesty. It was a seriously tormenting life, and the direct inverse of Seca's insight, as he was given all he wanted as long as he could deliver really posterity. The battles of his posterity are one reason why the vast majority of his relatives are obscure. At that point, Pataseca could scarcely tell which kids were his, alongside those of different reproducers. The kids would be given something to do once they grew up, very much like their folks. The youngsters were viewed as property, believed products to be purchased, sold, and exchanged. Families were frequently destroyed as kids were isolated from their moms and kin, totally neglecting their close-to-home prosperity. When grown up, the oppressed youngsters had to work, performing difficult undertakings that were genuinely requesting and frequently perilous. They were allotted to different jobs, relying upon their age and actual capacities. A few worked in the fields close by grown-ups, working under the burning sun for extended periods of time, picking cotton, establishing harvests, or keeping an eye on animals. Others were appointed to homegrown work, serving in families as house slaves. They were liable for tasks like cleaning, cooking, and dealing with the offspring of the slave proprietors. These kids persevered through both physical and psychological mistreatment on account of their lords and special ladies. Slave youngsters were additionally exposed to dehumanizing rehearses. They were in many cases denied training, as it was accepted that an informed slave was a danger to the foundation of bondage. Without admittance to learning, these kids were deliberately kept uninformed and denied the valuable chance to foster their scholarly capacities. Besides, the subjugated kids confronted different types of mercilessness. They could be exposed to cruel actual discipline, like whipping or beating, for the littlest infraction. The objective was to ingrain dread, control, and a feeling of inadequacy inside them. This severe treatment effectively propagated the thought that they were not exactly human, and support the power elements of bondage. Because of his outcome in delivering countless posterity for his proprietor, Pataseca got generally good treatment. He was conceded extraordinary honors, and surprisingly, got a plot of land from his lord when bondage was nullified in Brazil in 1888. Subsequent to acquiring his opportunity, Pataseca found love and friendship in a lady named Palmyra, whom he wedded. Together they would bring up 9 youngsters, framing the groundwork of their own loved ones. In the land skilled to him by his previous expert, Seca devoted himself to developing another life for his family, embracing the job of a rancher. Seca claimed and worked Sitio Pataseca, his own special homestead. Here, he worked vigorously in the creation and offer of rapadura, a strong type of raw natural sweetener. However, his income were unobtrusive, Seika used them to accommodate his family, supporting their prosperity and encouraging his fantasies of a more splendid tomorrow. While he lived as a liberated person, Seika could always be unable to interface with any of the many kids he fathered while oppressed. As a proper man training and confronted the savage real factors of the slave period, Seika didn't approach any documentation that could end up being useful to him, follow any of his posterity. Demonstrating their dads and moms were seldom kept, further entangling his pursuit. Pataseka passed on June 13, 1958, at 130 years old. He passed on calmly in his bed in St. Eudoxia, São Carlos, São Paulo, Brazil. At the hour of his demise, he was encircled by his loved ones who regarded him with tunes and petitions. Seika survived numerous authentic occasions and changes in Brazil. He saw the finish of servitude in 1888, the declaration of the Republic in 1889, the ascent and fall of a few presidents and tyrannies, 2 universal conflicts, and numerous social developments. His burial service was gone to by large number of individuals who offered their appreciation to him. His body was covered in a graveyard in St. Eudoxia, where a landmark was raised in his honor. Pataseka's job as a slave raiser reveals the chilly, determined nature of subjugation during that time. Subjugation was not just about taking advantage of actual work. It was likewise a treacherous framework that looked to sustain itself by rearing and propagating ages of oppressed people. Similarly, as creatures are specifically reproduced for explicit qualities, oppressed individuals were exposed to a dehumanizing interaction that ignored their independence and regarded them as just a necessary evil. The detestations of subjugation become even more chilling when we understand that these people were not viewed as individuals with freedoms, sentiments, and organization. Their lives were controlled, with their bodies exposed to the impulses of their proprietors. The demonstration of reproducing slaves was not a decision made from sympathy or compassion, yet rather a merciless system to get a steady stockpile of workers, propagating the pattern of mistreatment and double-dealing. In spite of the fact that Pataseka's job as a slave raiser uncovers the chilling real factors of subjugation, it is essential to perceive that his life went in a new direction after he was liberated from servitude. Regardless of the haziness of his past, Pataseka had the option to manufacture a way towards a more satisfied life. His heritage lives on as a demonstration of the strength and flexibility of the people who persevered through the haziest sections of history. As always, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share our recordings to help more people learn about the realities of Black people and hear their own stories. Thank you for viewing and watching till the end. See you next time. Peace.